Think about the last time you walked somewhere. Not a hike, not a workout, just walking. To your car, through a parking lot, down a hallway at work, across a grocery store. You probably didn't think about it at all. That's the point. Walking is so automatic, so below the threshold of conscious effort, that it never occurs to most people that anything meaningful is happening. But something is. Researchers have spent decades studying human gait, the speed of it, the steadiness of it, the subtle changes in it over time. And what they've found is that the way you walk, specifically how fast you walk when you're not thinking about how fast you're walking, is one of the most quietly accurate windows into what's happening inside your body and your brain. You're going to think about walking differently after this. In 2011, a research team published a study in JAMA that analyzed data from 9 separate studies covering more than 34,000 adults aged 65 and older. They were looking for predictors of longevity, and they tested a lot of variables: medical history, blood pressure, BMI, heart rate, existing conditions. Then they looked at walking speed, measured simply: a straight line, a fixed distance, how long it takes you to walk it at your normal pace. Walking speed outperformed most of the other variables as a predictor of how many years a person had left. Not marginally, significantly. People who walked faster lived longer. People who walked slower died sooner. And the relationship was consistent enough across 34,000 subjects that the researchers concluded walking speed should be considered a vital sign. Same category as blood pressure and resting heart rate. Here's why that's strange if you think about it. Walking speed feels like an output, a consequence of how healthy you are, and it is. But it's also a signal, a readable one. The body is a system, and the pace at which you move through space turns out to be an accurate summary of how well that system is running. Most people think of walking as something the legs do. It isn't. Walking requires your cardiovascular system to be delivering enough oxygen, your lungs to be exchanging it efficiently, your nervous system to be sending clean signals to your muscles, your inner ear and cerebellum to be managing balance in real time, your prefrontal cortex to be handling spatial awareness and obstacle prediction, your muscles to be responding with appropriate force and timing. It is one of the most neurologically complex things you do on a daily basis. And you do it without thinking, which means when it starts to degrade, you usually don't notice until the degradation is significant. Studies tracking adults over multiple decades have found that a measurable slowdown in walking speed often precedes clinical diagnosis of serious conditions by years: cognitive decline, early-stage dementia, cardiovascular disease. The slowdown shows up in the data before the symptoms show up in the doctor's office. A study published in JAMA Neurology found that slower walking speed in midlife, not old age, midlife, was associated with accelerated brain aging, as measured by MRI. Smaller brain volume, thinner cortical surface, weaker white matter integrity. The people who were walking slower at 45 had older-looking brains than the people walking faster at the same age. That's not a coincidence. That's a readout. Here's the part that doesn't make it into most of the coverage on this topic. Walking speed isn't just a physical biomarker, it correlates with psychological variables in ways that are hard to dismiss. Research on what's called behavioral activation energy, essentially the baseline level of drive and motivation a person operates with, consistently shows up in physical expression. People with higher baseline energy and purpose tend to move with more urgency, even when there's no external pressure to do so. People with lower baseline energy, whether from depression, chronic stress, or diminished sense of agency, tend to move slower. This isn't about personality types or introversion. It's about the underlying system that generates forward momentum, literally and figuratively. They track together more than most people are comfortable acknowledging. A longitudinal study following adults over 10 years found that declining walking speed correlated not just with physical health deterioration, but with declining scores on life satisfaction, sense of purpose, and social engagement. The causality runs in multiple directions. Physical decline slows you down, but psychological contraction does too. What this means is that your walking speed is picking up signal from more systems than just your heart and your legs. It's also reading something about how engaged you are with your own life. The reason this matters more than people assume is timing. Most of the attention on walking speed as a health marker gets placed on the elderly, but the research increasingly points to midlife as the window that actually matters. The changes that show up dramatically at 70 often started quietly at 45. A study tracking adults from their 40s into their 70s found that the rate of change in walking speed over time was more predictive than the absolute speed at any single point. People who maintained or improved their pace through their 40s and 50s showed dramatically better outcomes across the board. People who showed even modest but consistent slowing through that same period showed the opposite. The window where intervention actually changes the trajectory is not the window most people think about. It's not after the diagnosis, it's before the symptom. It's the decade when life is busy enough that the slow drift in physical capacity goes completely unnoticed. You're probably in that window right now, or you recently passed through it. Here's where this gets strange in a way the researchers themselves seemed surprised by. Walking speed doesn't just predict your health outcomes. It correlates with your financial ones, too. A study from the English Longitudinal Study of Aging tracked over 7,000 adults and found a consistent and measurable gap in walking speed between wealth groups. At age 71, people in the poorest wealth bracket walked at an average of 0.75 meters per second. People in the richest bracket walked at 0.91 meters per second, and the gap didn't close over time. The wealthiest group only reached critically slow walking speeds at age 90, while the poorest group reached that same threshold 6 years earlier. 6 years, expressed in walking speed. Now, you could explain this away easily. Wealthier people have better health care, better nutrition, less physically demanding jobs, less chronic stress. Of course, they walk faster, but that explanation only goes so far. Research from the Health and Employment After 50 cohort study found that slow walking speed was a significant predictor of health-related exit from employment among older workers. In plain terms, people who walked slower were more likely to be pushed out of the workforce early, not by choice, by capacity. And here's the part that closes the loop in an uncomfortable way. Leaving the workforce early, even by a few years, doesn't just affect income. It affects pension accumulation, retirement calculations, investment compounding, and the ability to absorb financial shocks without drawing down savings. The body and the bank account are reading from the same source. Most people just never think to look at both at once. So where does that leave you? Your walking speed is just a reflection, not the root cause. You can't fix what's going on under the hood just by forcing yourself to walk faster. Trying to game the test doesn't change what the test is actually measuring. What the research is really trying to tell us is a bit of a hard pill to swallow. The things that keep your walking speed up, like your heart health, brain function, muscle strength, and just being mentally engaged, are the exact same systems that need steady, boring maintenance over decades. It's not about dramatic biohacks or over-the-top optimization culture. It's literally just about not letting things slowly slide by unnoticed. The kind of spooky thing about walking speed as a biomarker is how passive it is. It isn't asking you to do anything. It's just quietly taking notes on what's already happening every single day in parking lots, grocery store aisles, and hallways when you're completely on autopilot. Your body has been keeping score this whole time. You just weren't looking at the scoreboard. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.